My guest today is Jurgi Camblong, the founder and longtime CEO of SOPHiA GENETICS.
Initially, the three founders, we added $70,000 each. So for me, it was all the fortune I got from my parents put aside so that eventually one day I would buy a flat. Values are about beliefs and virtues are about actions.
Am I correct that you started the company in a 1,000 square foot, which is very, very small, 10 square meters?
Yeah, 10 square meter. Absolutely.
What is the message that you give to your employees to say, this is not our definition of success? This stock price is not a barometer.
That the most important and the one thing they should be part of SOPHiA is to impact on as many patients as possible around the world. Because I believe that, alone you can go faster, but together we can go further.
My guest today is Jurgi Camblong, the founder and longtime CEO of SOPHiA GENETICS. On paper, this company shouldn't have worked. Jurgi wasn't a software engineer or a CEO. He was building an AI company before AI was all the rage. And he was doing it in Switzerland while the genomics industry was centered in the United States. But he had a vision that genomic information would fundamentally change medicine, and that if hospitals could learn from one another, patients everywhere would benefit. What followed was 15 years of persistence, convincing hospitals to trust cloud computing and AI, raising capital in Europe when most of the funding was in the US, and building a company that today supports nearly 1,000 customers and has analyzed over 2.5 million genomic profiles. In this conversation, Jurgi and I talk about growing up in the Basque region of France, overcoming severe dyslexia, and how both shape the way he leads. We get into the scaling challenges, why he believes culture should be defined by actions rather than values, and what he learned building a company where trust has to be earned, one customer at a time. We also talk about his decision to step aside as CEO and why he believes SOPHiA's biggest chapter is still ahead. I have to apologize in advance to our viewers and to Jurgi. My camera was having technical issues that day, so I'm very sorry for the video lag. Please enjoy my conversation with Jurgi Camblong. So before we get started, I have to ask Jurgi, why is the I in SOPHiA lowercase? Because it stands out very much.
Yes. So basically it's for, in French, intelligence artificielle, right? Artificial intelligence. And when we funded the company, given our experience in what we could call systems biology, data analytics, bioinformatics, it was a given that AI technologies would become extremely important in healthcare.
Yes. Well, but when you came up with the name, people were not really talking about artificial intelligence. Am I right?
No, you're right. Well, we funded the company back in 2011. Actually, we had no technology. It was just kind of a dream and a vision. And we combine in the name both the AI aspect as well as the sustainability aspect. And as you can see, the AI are two letters, part of SOPHiA, which are more letters.
Mm-hmm.
And SOPHiA in Greek means wisdom. And actually, our intent was applying AI to create a wise, sustainable healthcare market.
Well, I definitely want to get back to the founding of SOPHiA in a little bit, but maybe I can just ask you, SOPHiA today, and as you think about what you've built over the last 15 years, it's part healthcare, part technology. So in healthcare, you've analyzed, probably 2.5 million genomes, but you rely very much on clinical validation. You are subject to regulatory requirements. Your hospital customers, which you probably have, I think over 800 hospital customers, have very long sales cycles. And of course, you're dealing with patient lives. On the tech side, though, you are selling software as a service. Your technology is based on machine learning and artificial intelligence, as we just talked about. You have tech-like gross margins in the mid-70s. And your business depends on a very much a classic network effect. So are you a tech company? Is SOPHiA a tech company in healthcare or a healthcare company based very much on technology?
We are definitely a tech company in the healthcare industry. Absolutely.
Okay. And when you say, I've heard you say that you operate internally as a tech company, how is that how might that be different than other healthcare IT companies out there?
I think the pace at which we develop things is very much like what any software company is doing around the world. So, like, indeed, despite we're in a regulated environment and we support hospitals, the cycle of the release of our platforms, our software, it's every 3 weeks.
Well,
Actually, I would prefer to be every other week when it was like this a couple of years ago. But now, with the quantity of data we compute and the number of customers we had to compromise a little bit. But that's very important because, in general, as a software company, this is what defines whether you're going to remain agile in terms of culture and whether you're going to be close to your customers and able of delivering quickly features that customers are expecting, right? And so that's one angle. The other angle is that we are being since day 100% digital. So we
hmm.
physically are in offices, but we've been using digital tools since the beginning, whether it's to interact with customers or document our own developments.
Well, I wanted to go back to the beginning because in many ways, I think that Sophia was up against a lot of unusual odds, against a lot of odds that we're going to talk about over this conversation. But let's first start with your upbringing because it's not a very traditional upbringing. You were born and raised in Basque region of France. So maybe tell us a little bit about, and I also learned a word, ikastola, which I don't know what that is. Well, I think I know what that is, but tell us about your upbringing a little bit. What is ikastola, and tell us a little bit about the Basque region.
I think it's a good question because often, our roots are defining our values and what we're going to do, and maybe enable us as well to have wings. So back to my roots, indeed. So I grew up in southwest of France, in a region called Basque Country. Actually, after I've been living for 1 year in the US, and I met as well a couple of Navarros. I'm telling as well people in Europe that we are among the indigenous people of Europe.
Yeah.
So we're white, but our language is very old. It's called an orphan language. So the origins are known. So probably between 6 and 30,000 year old,
Wow.
um, more older than Latin by far, probably older than ancient Greek.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, it has been a population that has been, I don't know, for whatever reason, a bit preserved. There are studies showing that genetically as well, there are some maybe differences. So probably something like 60 years ago,
Wow.
our parents in the French side of Basque Country basically started to finance by themselves their own schools, uh, build their own schools on weekends, pay themselves the teachers, so that we could not only speak our language at home, but learn our language as well at school. And so this is called an ikastola. So basically, these are Basque schools. Now they are official. When I was young, they were not recognized by the French state, which is a very centralized state, unlike the US or unlike Spain, as an example. And now they're official and private. So basically, you have people who study in Basque until end of the high school, and
Wow.
basically, before they go to the university in France, they still have to pass the last test in French. But remarkably, it happened that these Basque schools end up sometimes being the best schools of all France.
I'm
And
sure.
some people would call them actually to tell them, "Oh, I saw you were ranked number one as a high school. Can I register my child in that school?" And then, they would tell them, "Does they speak Basque?" No. So yeah, it's not going to be so easy if they join our school while they're 18 and they don't still speak Basque. Yeah,
That's funny. Well, and so you grew up speaking French and Basque. When did you learn to
and
speak
Spanish,
and Spanish?
and Spanish.
So when
Yes,
did you learn English?
actually, in France. our ability of teaching other languages in general, whether it's in Basque schools or French schools, public, private, is terrible. It's very, very bad. And so I had English for maybe, I don't know, 3 hours a week for about 10 years, and I would be terrible at it. And back 2002, I arrived in Switzerland to start my PhD. And because Geneva is so international, I was surrounded in the faculty. I was doing my research by Croatians, Germans, Finnish, Swiss, Italians. And so the common language would be English, and not only socially, but as well to present our research work. And so this is where I would say I started to be able to speak a little bit of English.
Well, I would say your English is pretty spectacular, certainly way better than my French. That's for sure. I was also told growing up that you had dyslexia. How did that play out for you, not only during your upbringing, but also later in life, as an academic, and then, of course, as a CEO?
Yeah. So I will start by, I remember one of my first presentations when I was a PhD student in Geneva. I had my slides and I wrote out of which, but which being the which,
Oh,
uh, right?
WITCH.
Exactly. And then for me was, I wouldn't understand why people were laughing in the room. So yes, I still have severe dyslexia. When I was a child at primary school, we would have this test where we had to learn specific words and then, stupidly write them again, right, on a piece of paper at school. And those days when we had to do that, I was really feeling super bad. I was sometimes pretending I injured myself and put something on my fingers, not telling my parents. And it's not like I was, a bad student, but it's just like it was impossible. And
It
at the
was
time, we wouldn't have the tools to diagnose people suffering from
That's right.
dyslexia. Luckily, my sister, sorry, was the same. Actually, in France, normally you grade from 0 to 20 because she would be so bad in writing. When they would do the writing exams, they would start ranking us from -20 to 0
Oh,
to
no.
let her see that she was progressing.
Oh, no.
But no, it's not easy because you when you're dyslexic, you read very slowly,
Mhm.
you do mistakes, and you may give the impression to the people that you don't pay attention to details. So I would say on the positive side, this probably helped me develop some strategies and as well made me obsess about details, right? So when I'm writing now, I'm not necessarily seeing my mistakes, but if you would send me your text, I may end up being better than you on finding your mistakes. So yeah, it has been a learning. One thing I would add is, there is a book that speaks about dyslexia not as a penalty, but rather as a gift. In French, is le don de dyslexie, the gift of dyslexia. And there being a methodology that has been developed around that to basically benefit from that gift. Um, and what they explain in that book is that, we all, as a child, conceive the word in either an absolute way as well as a sequential way. So, for example, if you say ball, you can visualize a ball, right?
Mhm.
But when you are adding articles like next to the ball, there is a flower that is on top of a table. For a dyslexic, this sequence is very, very hard
Mm.
because outside flower and ball, the other words that I used, determinants, are not things that we can represent in our mind. And so, as a dyslexic, we tend to be very bad, if you like, on the sequence of the events,
Hmm.
but we tend to be quite good at the end. And I see that with my daughter, who is as well dyslexic and is finishing her high school and probably will go to med school next year. She developed unique capabilities on knowing the answer, but sometimes she struggled to explain how she reached the answer.
Right. Well, I suppose maybe for you, in many ways, it keeps your eye as a CEO on what the vision of the company is and knowing what the outcome, um, and even in the process, double checking your work, being very detail oriented. Hopefully
Absolutely.
that's helped you. And again, has been a gift, as you talked about, over your career. But bravo to having to overcome something like that and still being so super successful.
Thank you.
Maybe let's talk about the founding of SOPHiA. So you did your PhD in Geneva and then your postdoc at Oxford. Um, and there were three of you, and I'm probably not going to pronounce their names properly. Pierre Hutter and Lars Steinmetz,
Very
who
good.
found. Thank you. Who started SOPHiA? Can you tell us a little bit about the founding story, about how you three came together, what the vision was, and am I correct that you started the company in a 1,000 square foot room, which is very, very small, or 10
Probably,
square meters?
yeah, 10 square meter. Absolutely. You're
Yeah.
right. And the first coffee machine was a gift that my wife gave us, and we would have that, on top of the servers. And sometimes the coffee machine would leak on the
Oh no,
servers. So
was it an
people
espresso as
remember
well?
that. Absolutely, it was an espresso. So back 2011, I was leading a small company after my postdoc, and this is how I came back to Switzerland. And in that capacity, I met Pierre Hutter, was a quite renowned geneticist in Switzerland, expert in colon cancer.
Mhm.
And both of us, in the first time we met, realized that we had the same vision that actually data would become more and more important in healthcare, especially with digitalization of genomic sequencing. And so our idea was basically that by supporting hospitals to compute data, one would end up uh, building a data lake that would enable to build a collective intelligence and further help every of the hospitals that would use such a platform to identify signal into the data. And while Pierre had the genetic expert view, and I had a biology background, I wanted as well to have someone who understood what is systems biology,
Mhm.
and so data compute at scale in biology. And I had been working during my PhD postdoc with someone who is now the chairman of the genetic department of Stanford and the director of the Genome Center in Stanford, Lars Steinmetz. And so we asked him basically to meet with us, and he was very seduced by the idea, and this is how it started.
That's great. And so, how did you split the roles in those early days?
Look, at the beginning, when we started, I was still active CEO on the small company I mentioned, and
Gene
I
Predictus.
basically Gene Predictis exactly, and mentioned I said the founders that I would leave, and I stayed a bit longer because I wanted this to be a smooth transition for them as well. And so personally, I started working for SOPHiA in September 2011. And the same week, I started my executive MBA at the Polytechnic School of Lausanne. So it was not easy, Shital.
And you
For
had
one
young
year,
kids at home, is that right?
I have two young kids that were 2 and 4 year old. And for basically 1 year and a half, I wouldn't watch any video either on my TV or on my computer. Actually, one of my daughters wouldn't like me to come and help her when she would wake up at night. She would tell me, "Not you," because I was never there.
Oh,
Uh,
no,
but
that's
I had a lot
horrible.
of support from my wife. Yeah, this was on TV, but I had a lot of support from my wife. And so at that time, basically, I started building the business plan. And Pierre and Lars would be more like supporting the thesis of the business plan with their domain expertise. And then Lars never worked for the company because he was very busy as an academic with his research lab in both Heidelberg, Germany, and Stanford, California. And Pierre actually did work in the company, I think, for about 4 or 5 years, for 2 days a week. And if you like, bring a little bit the eye of what the customers would be like, so that we would be able to develop the technology more rapidly.
Yeah. You mentioned your executive MBA. Um, is given the academic background that you had, you're obviously a PhD. Did you feel like you needed an MBA in order to take on that CEO role? Was it something that you felt like you lacked?
It's a very good question. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. Both my father, uncle, and other uncle are being entrepreneurs, although mainly in what we call cooperatives, but
Okay.
with an entrepreneurial mindset as well. In the Basque schools, we had to be very entrepreneurial in the
Right.
Ikastola. Um, so when I led Gene Predictis, I had no background, right?
Mhm.
But I wouldn't know whether I was doing it well or wrong. And basically, for me, the executive MBA was a way to basically know what would be the rules of leading a company by the book, both on the marketing side, on the business side, on the cost management side, on the financial side. And so I would basically, I wouldn't tell you that it was transformative in my understanding of the business, but it was very reassuring to see that I would know what would be the rules. And that then if I wouldn't basically follow these by the book rules, I would do that intentionally with knowing that I was going off road. So in that regard, for me, it proven to be very good.
Oh, that's good. So we had talked a lot about, or before we talked about, as a tech company, you want to be innovative. But it actually took you 3 or 4 years to come up with a product initially. I don't wanna say what took so long, but what was that process like, for all of you to come up with this software, that customers could use?
Well, obviously, in the age of LLMs and AI, people believe that you can build a software in a day, right? So back then, just to take a big step back, the cloud wasn't almost existing. People wouldn't basically compute data in the cloud. They would compute them locally in their servers, and people wouldn't really know what to do actually with this data. Uh, they would tell you, we understand that this new data modality, genomics, next generation DNA sequencing, is going to be important in rare inherited disorders, in solid tumors. But actually, we don't trust that technology because it produces crappy data, very fast but crappy. And so we're still using orthogonal solutions that we had in the lab,
Mhm.
like Sanger sequencing, RSCGH, and so on. But I would say, even on our side and on the customer side or potential customer side, everyone had underestimated the importance of the accuracy of the data and the importance of really beefing up AI algorithms
Mhm.
to be able to find signal into the data and trust those technologies. So if like from funding the company in 2011 to putting something on hand of the customers in 20, end of 2014, it had been a process of really understanding where the market was by interacting with potential customers and making sure that how we were building the technology would be something that customers would be happy to pay for.
Yeah. I mean, the democratization or the decentralization of genomic analyses, I mean, obviously understanding the accuracy is very difficult, but getting access to that data must have been really challenging. And even was that just knocking on a lot of doors and, the door to door sales, if you will?
The door-to-door sales, as if I may, being a European, maybe in the US people wouldn't do that, like more months that we have in Europe, right? That are coming to kind of advocate
Hmm.
in a nice way with respect. So we had to do that. Absolutely. We had to do a lot of advocacy on the fact that cloud will be needed, AI will be needed, that one could compute data outside the hospital while respecting privacy and security. And then we had to show that basically the outcome of the data compute we would do with our AI algorithms would be best in class.
Are there any stories from the early days that you remember where you just thought to yourself, this is not going to work. I can't do this anymore.
Yes, I can give you some stories. So initially, we signed 2 contracts in Switzerland, and I think actually with private lab and hospital. And I don't think either of them is are a customer today or small customer. And what would happen there is that they would sign, they would give us the cash, but they were never themselves moved to routine into the
Mm.
Illumina sequencers. And as a consequence, despite we received cash because they were not using the platform, we couldn't recognize the revenue, right?
Oh,
And so this is where, personally, I took a step back. I went to a whiteboard and I drew something that I called setup program. So basically, is how, as a client, I could help you validate your test with our platform in house so that you could go to the authorities and say, yes, I did my verification, my validation plan. This is how it looks like. And this is the outcome of basically the test I'm doing. And they are sensitive and specific and so on. And so one would believe that, they would do it by themselves because it's not so hard.
right.
But no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't have the discipline. And this ended up being very important because actually then we use this methodology each time we would onboard every
Yeah, for other
customer.
customers.
Exactly. And by doing that, we would be exposed to more and more complex type of samples that we had to compute. And thanks to that, if you like, our AI algorithms would be exposed to more diversity, which would enable us to build better AI.
So sometimes complexity and maybe laziness on the part of your customer turned out to be a benefit in general.
Absolutely.
One of the other, what I was surprised when I learned a little bit about SOPHiA's history is actually how much capital you raised before going public. I think about $250 million through your Series F rounds. Um, it's not easy to raise capital as a European-based company. So how difficult was it in the early days, and what skills did you feel like you needed to learn in order to more easily raise capital?
As a European company back then, to raise $250 million was very hard.
Mhm.
Um, I think what made it happen is being our obstination, my obstination. Back to your question, maybe on the origins, the Castola, having already facing adversity since young age and understanding that you can count only on yourself to drive a change, but then that you have others that need to be part of it and which support you. And so in the beginning, it was basically business angels.
Mhm.
And if you allow me to tell you a story,
Yes.
uh, initially, so the three founders, we added $70,000 each. So for me, it was all the fortune I got from my parents.
Yeah.
That's they had put aside so that eventually one day I would buy a flat. And after a year, I pitched a number of business angels in Switzerland to have them potentially invest in the company, including one who was very sophisticated in genomics, actually maybe even the father of the patent of Illumina today.
Oh.
And it turned out that I was naive, that, the guy had told me, yeah, I'm going to invest. And I stopped raising money, right? I stopped creating awareness. I was so confident he would invest.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And the same week, my wife lost her job here in Geneva because the big pharma company Merck Serono decided to shut down the Serono office and fired over 1,000 people. And I had the visit of my sister, and she always remembers that I was super cool. And I was telling her, we still have four months of money. Uh, I will try to raise money, but if not, it's fine. We may come to live with you in Basque Country. We sell our flat here in Switzerland. And this was a good learning, Shital, because what I did there is basically I reached out to almost everyone I knew, even my banker who made me my loan to buy my flat in Switzerland. And by doing that very actively, as every salesperson should do it with a high sense of energy and urgency, very quickly I get to manage to raise $1 million. And then once you start having a club of supporters, it starts to become easier.
Yeah. Yeah, but It sounds like creating that flywheel, and also maybe a bit about maintaining relationships with people.
That's super important, Chital. For me, I'm someone who, again, back to maybe my roots, long civilization. I think about being collective and collective intelligence as well within SOPHiA. And I think that everyone needs to win, right? And so, indeed, I always maintained very close relationship with investors. We had many, right? Well, probably more than 50 investors in total. But I really wanted to make sure that they would understand where we were going. I wanted them to know if things were not going as well as what we had thought. I really wanted them to trust me and trust that I was there working for everyone, right? Not just for my bank account and myself. Um, and I think this worked out quite well.
Maybe we can fast forward to the IPO. I've asked this question of other guests, but why was it important to go public? And what did that provide that maybe staying private didn't?
No, very good question. And sometimes people are asking me now, would you have stayed private, knowing that maybe the market changed a bit? I said no, because actually the reason we went public was uh, first to make sure that the business would be transparent and sustainable. I was telling you that I will step down as a CEO. For me, it was very clear that despite being a founder of SOPHiA, having led the company since the beginning, it was not the only thing I would do in life.
Hmm.
Uh, but I wanted this basically tool that I think can transform healthcare, delivering and democratizing data-driven medicine, be very sustainable for the very long term. And for me, being public was probably securing that aspect. Second, on the transparency, given we work with healthcare institutions, um, being very clear on what we're doing with their data, what is our role, how we're being paid, how we use our proceeds, for me was very important as well, because I believe that, alone you can go faster, but together we can go further.
Yes.
And in our model, we need to go further and we need to have hospitals trust us. And last, I would say is brand recognition so that it would be easier to attract talents, but as well, it would be easier to sign contracts with US academic centers and private labs, as well as biopharma industry.
You went public in the middle of 2021 when there was a lot of euphoria, I think. And you went public at I think $18, and then it proceeded to go as low as I think in the $2 to $3 range. How do you, as a leader, what is the message that you give to your employees to say, this is not our definition of success? This stock price is not a barometer of our success.
It's a very important question, and we give you the answer. But actually, we did something before we would knew that the stock would go down, because indeed we went public last week of July 2021, when basically the industry was super hot, and then the markets were completely closed in diagnostic tools and solutions over Steg Bio from first week of August 2021. And despite we grew the first year 40%, the stock declined 80%, right?
Yeah.
Quite quickly after the IPO, while the stock was still sustaining, I had asked our the chair of our audit committee, Didier Hirsch, was a very experienced finance guy, who had been the CFO of Agilent, basically explain exactly what you said in front of the Sophians and tell them not to be obsessed with the stock, that we wouldn't know whether it would go up or down,
Hmm.
but that markets were not necessarily easy to predict, and that the core metrics should be very much around the size of our networks, the number of institutions we support, the number of patients that benefit from our technology, the growth on our top line, which is important because that's the reflection as well of us bringing value, the gross margins, and lastly, showing that step by step we're reaching to profitability. Look, I still believe, Shital, that it's good to be public. I like to be the CEO of a public company. I like the fact that you need to report quarterly. Um, but indeed, to your point, that's not the most important metric, right? Having shareholders who understand your business, who are backing up your investments is very important to transform the world.
Hmm.
But we have always reiterated to our people that the most important and the one thing they should be part of SOPHiA is to impact on as many patients as possible
Yeah.
around the world.
I've read that you talked just in terms of SOPHiA culture, that it's not about values, but it's about virtues. Can you explain the difference in your mind?
Absolutely. Values are about beliefs and virtues are about actions. And again, given everything I told you, I'm a person of action, right? I don't necessarily count on others to take actions. I can trash my bin, I can do other things. And I thought that, the relative success SOPHiA had until 2021, when we defined our virtues, was very much related to people who are being very much actors within the company. And
Hmm.
so hence we defined indeed virtues, or virtues being we do, we decide, we learn, we adapt, we innovate, we collaborate, and we empower. And then we have one mantra, which is we care. It starts with patients, but then it goes to employees, then it goes to customers, and it goes to shareholders.
I love that. So all of the we, they're all action oriented.
All action oriented.
I think that's
Absolutely.
great. You have talked, going back to scaling of SOPHiA, you have talked about the challenges of scaling SOPHiA. I think in particular, maybe 300 to 500 employees, I think was a difficult period of time. Can you tell us a little bit about why that was challenging for you and what were the mistakes that you felt like you made during that period of time?
Absolutely. So first, I would say that until 100 people, you know everyone.
Right.
And
Yes.
again, if you're a person of action, it's maybe your comfort zone. There might be that others are more comfortable that when it's bigger because they might be better in systems and better in the action personally. So until 100, you know everyone, you know what they are doing, and you can already help them connect with each other very quickly, right? You can pass by one office after the other, have a little chat, and in 5 minutes understand that that person needs to connect with that other person to solve a problem. Then this works to some extent, I would say, from my experience until 300, although it starts to be harder. And then from there, what you are trying to do is to move from people to process,
Yeah.
and this is very painful and very hard. Maybe, if one would have started with processes earlier, it might have
Right.
been easier. And you get a bit lost. You get a bit lost because you're recruiting people, back to your point, and we move to 500 people. You recruit people that need to be onboarded differently. Because you don't have the time necessarily as well, yourself or your leadership to spend with them, and you need to have very, very clear processes to be able to do that. And so it's, if you like, it's like growing and building the processes while you're onboarding people. And to me, this, at least in my case, proved to be very hard. And back to your point on mistakes, in post-COVID period, we basically recruited too many people. And our historical CTO, who still worked in the company, told me one day, no, not only we recruited too many people, but we recruited people that recruited people. And so back to my point on the culture and on the processes, we were not ready. We were not ready because we were probably in our, you call it the middle, when you are teenager
Yeah, the
age.
adolescent
Yeah,
or middle, yeah, teenager
yeah,
or
we
tweens.
were not yet exactly. We were not mature enough.
Mm.
We didn't have the systems, the process. It was not sufficiently mechanic to recruit people. Now, the good news is I think we've digested that, right? And this made as well the company much stronger, much better. We have better understood as well which type of people we need to attract, growth, which type of people we need to terminate as well in the company, which type of systems we need to put in place. But it has been a very hard journey.
Yeah, I got to imagine as an organization gets bigger, communicating clearly also gets more challenging as well.
Well, that's another topic, and I learned that actually 3-4 years ago when my successor Rasmussen had recruited someone called Kellen Sanger, who is now in charge of strategy at SOPHiA, including investor relation. And Kellen had been working in very large companies like United Health, reporting to the CEO of United Health, and had clear methodologies with programs and initiatives to indeed help people understand how they were contributing to the vision.
Hmm.
These are simple techniques, but personally, I had never experimented, right?
Yeah.
Because I had never built a company of 500 people. And indeed, proved to be very good to communicate and help people understand while they were doing something in front of of themselves in their desk, how by doing so they were contributing to bigger objective within the organization. So
Yeah.
yeah, communication was as well a big problem. Not that we wouldn't speak, but we wouldn't speak with the clarity that was required to make people successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's reminding people that they add value at perhaps all levels of the organization. I wanted to ask about partnerships. You have many at SOPHiA. I maybe I may venture out to say two of the most important are AstraZeneca and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, as well as Microsoft. Were partnerships an original part of the SOPHiA plan? And why did they become important over time? And maybe we'll start there.
Yes, so definitely partnerships were important, but when you are small, it's not so easy to build effective partnerships, right? And the very first one, to give you an idea, Shital, was a small company that ended up being acquired by Agilent called Multiplicom.
Okay.
And they were the first ones in Europe developing IVD like kits for next generation DNA sequencing.
Okay.
And when everyone would move from Roche sequencers into the hospitals to Illumina sequencers, we partner with them to do co-selling, right? And so we would sell to their customer base who would use their consumables and move to a new type of sequencer. And for that would require a platform like SOPHiA to compute their data.
Mhm.
And without that event in 2015, 16, 17, we would have never been able to build our network.
Hmm.
So partnerships had always been very important. There's some others, that I think never really scaled. For us, the most natural partner would be Illumina, given they are dominant with the sequencing instruments. At some point, we helped them as well develop some assays, but unfortunately for diverse reasons I never scaled. But yes, for me it was very clear that again, alone you can go faster, but together you can go further.
Mhm.
And as a software company, and in the software world is very well known, you cannot just do everything by yourself. You need to
Yeah.
be part of an ecosystem.
I have to stop here and ask, maybe we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but Sophia and you were really up against all odds. You'd never run a company before. You were an academic. You're building the company in Switzerland, raising capital in Europe when really the most of the market is in the United States. And you're selling, as we talked about, to customers that needed to trust the data, and that takes time. So, up against all odds, why do you think it worked, Jurgi?
Mm. I think, well, the need was still there despite all the odds. But you understood very well our business, Shital, and what was the situation. And these were really the odds. I think it has been the determination. And then because we would knock a lot of doors, the ability as well to build a technology which was universal and scalable. Basically, strong foundations on which we could continuously develop new type of features and capabilities. But for sure, it was not easy. And right now, I'll tell you, I'm doing a bit of that on advocating new capabilities on SOPHiA DDM, which we call digital twins.
Oh, right.
Uh,
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
and Yeah. So, I'm still very frustrated by the fact that when you have uh, friends calling you because either themselves or their family members have cancer,
Yeah.
that no hospital can tell you, okay, what has been the best way to treat this type of cancer in your institution, right? And in the end, in many, many words, what software enable is to provide you this business intelligence. This business intelligence where you can see that the best way to sell in a given region is by doing XYZ. And so here with the digital twins, what we are trying to achieve is the same, is to basically enable patients that may suffer from one type of cancer, let's say lung cancer, when they're being tested in hospital, to have a sense of how similar patients with similar clinical characteristics and molecular drivers are being responding to treatments real world
Hmm.
and real time. And so there, because it's something that speaks to everyone, but in the meantime, not very clear on the regulatory side,
Yes.
with a lot of questions again around data privacy and so on,
Yeah.
is something that, needs someone passionate, advocating, that accept that, okay, it might be not something that, it's easy to do, but all of us want it. So let's do it together. And so this is where I'm spending quite of my time today. And hopefully tomorrow, thanks to that, within our network of actually it's 1,000 hospitals, not 800, but you are
Even
close,
better.
even better. Not only, we will deliver this collective intelligence to be able to help hospitals find what is driving the cancer of a patient at the molecular level, but offer all of them the ability to see that for that individual, 10,000 other patients in the network that have similar characteristics, and that out of these 10,000, the one that are being responding the best started with treatment A and moved to treatment B. And I've been speaking about it, I think, since 2016 or 2017 in a presentation I made in the Bay Area at BMWC, I think it's called the
Yeah.
Conference of Precision Medicine. And we are not still there yet, right?
I
So back
know.
to your point on it takes time. Yes, it is frustrating.
It is. So you may have more time on your hands now. At the beginning of this year, you announced that you will be transitioning to executive chair. Ross Mukin will be coming in as CEO on July 1st. Um, I know you've sacrificed a lot physically. You've had, some back issues. I'm sure you've traveled uh, just so much, but you're also still very young. So why was this the right time for you, Jurgi?
I wanted to do that at a time where the business would be fit, at the time where, myself, I would say, be happy and proud about what I had achieved. And I wanted to do that with someone who would have grown internally and would have the capabilities to basically expand the company far beyond my own capabilities. And
Mhm.
so I think, my successor, Ross Muken, who lives in Boston and who has grown fantastically well and, since quite some time because he
Yes.
was a sell-side analyst in the investment banking industry, has been exceptional at learning the SOPHiA language, at learning our processes, but in the meantime, as other attributes that make him more, I would say, even competent to scale that business. At least I would say from where we are to eventually $1 billion revenue, and then we'll see. And I would say for me, it was very important to have, again, the right partner that I would trust and that I feel the company would trust. I'm a good team member. So this has been defined a little bit as well by Ross Milken, my successor.
Mhm.
I'm going to dedicate my time to external affairs, to advocacy, and to innovation. Um, we have a lot of data, as you said, 2.5 million genomic profiles that we computed with Swiss precision.
Yes.
We have a lot of clinical decisions that are being taken in the platform by users. So if AI can be leveraged in precision medicine, we're probably better placed than anyone else. And so one of my basically duties will be as well to see how beyond biophysics related machine learning AI technologies we're using today, whether we could scale that with now so-called transformer-based large language models as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then same, when it comes to new data modalities, I think there might be other venues which are very exciting, starting with transcriptomics, which is ironically where I grew up as an academic when I did my PhD and my postdoc. And again, back to your question on, it takes time. Today in the clinical market, we're not still benefiting from the power of transcriptomics. And I think it will be there at scale quite soon. So these are areas where indeed I'm going to spend time, and hopefully with the same passion as I had as a CEO. And hopefully with the same, I would say, impact in the company.
Okay. I'm hoping that you will also spend some time with your wife and your two daughters after 15 years of perhaps not spending as much time with them. What are some of the personal things that you enjoy doing?
So I like sports in general, but back to your earlier question, I had five spine surgeries.
5.
The first one in 2019, and then 4 in 24. In 6 weeks' time, all urgent, where I would go to the hospital and they would tell me, have you eaten? No. So in 2 hours, you are in the block. I think I had the chance to be very well supported historically by our historical chairman, Antoine Duchateau, was an entrepreneur, as well by my wife, always told me, to take care of me, the children, our couple, the family. Yeah, maybe I stretch it a bit too much. So I like to do sports a lot, but now I have an handicap in one of my legs, and
Mm.
so I cannot run anymore. So cannot play tennis anymore.
Uh,
So I'm biking. Luckily this year I could start skiing again. So which for me was fantastic.
that's great.
And you're right. Yes, I want to be a bit more present for my daughters. One of them, as I said, will start med school next year,
Yeah.
and she will be very busy. She will stay home because in Europe, we have universities very close everywhere. And I told her that, given she won't have a lot of time, that we could bike together. And so as she would buy a bike, I bought a bike for myself as well. And with the other daughter, I'm spending now much more time. She has a dog. And I spend time basically walking with her and the dog, which is, a very good
Beautiful.
moment because we can speak as well about a lot of things. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. But
wonderful. Well, Jurgi, I can't thank you enough for sharing your story of founding SOPHiA. I know it was not easy. I'm sure many times along the way, but I hope that you can look at it today and feel very, very proud of what you've built, the employees that you've affected, but most importantly, the patients' lives that you've hoped to save. And it really is, I think, a fantastic company that really is looking to democratize diagnostics, regardless of where in the country, where in the world it may be. So I wish you the best of luck in this next chapter of your life. Um, I was told that despite all your success, you haven't lost who you are. You're still living in the 2-bedroom flat that you've been living in for many, many years, driving the same car. And maybe you could treat yourself to something special in this next chapter. But Jurgi, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
thank you very much, Ita. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.